trials and tribulations, where we break down the latest FDA revelations. DAPs, that's the talk of the day. Diversity action plans paving the way. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all, it's within our reach. FDA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around. FDA, please, we need the shift. Diversity and trials, let's uplift. DAP, yeah, you know me. Inclusivity for all, it's the key. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all, it's within our reach. FDA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around. So tune in live and join the ride. Diversity, trials, and tribulations, let's spread it wide. With DAPs, we're forging the path. Together in research, let's make it last. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all, it's within our reach. FDA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around. So tune in live and join the ride. Diversity, trials, and tribulations, let's spread it wide. With DAPs, we're forging the path. Together in research, let's make it last. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all, it's within our reach. FDA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around.
Wow.
Did you like it?
Bravo. Bravo.
Thank you.
Nicely
Thank you.
done.
Lovely.
DiversiTrials trials and tribulations. What an intro to this talk. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
You know how we like our AI songs here.
Mm-hmm. Well done, Mitch. Well done. Hey, welcome everyone. We're just now tuning in. I just posted it on LinkedIn. Just so you know, we're having a little bit of a problem with the DiversiTrials LinkedIn page and the streaming services and all of the videos. So we're going to try to cross promote when we do see it. If you see this later on, it's still worthwhile. Trust me. So Mitch Hilby, Dr. Hadi Danawi, I'm Daniel Fox. It's nice to meet everyone here. And I brought it. So I don't know about you, but I'm old school. Here it is.
Oh, you printed it. Nice.
Oh, yeah. So I love to print it double-sided because I want to save some paper and then just staple the edges and make myself a little book to read.
Nice.
So that's what I do. That's how I review things because, you know, I like to get very intimate with what I read and nothing more intimate than touch, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's an illegal highlighter, Mitch. Yellow is not allowed.
I've got like purple and pink and orange.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
So how do you digest something so you really want to understand and make comments on it?
Are you talking to me?
Hadi, yes.
Yes. I wanted to say, first of all, I have it on my second screen. It's always up, on my second screen. So I always refer to the DAP, as we call it. So how do you digest this? I mean, believe me, you cannot really comprehend and digest it from the first read. So you will have to actually, read part of it, reread it, every day, so you can actually have a full comprehension of what this guidance is about. What strikes me, first of all, we are, as a community, very grateful for this draft guidance, right? We have a chance to go in, share our voices, and say what we need to say. I think there's a lot to be said. Thanks for the FDA and all the groups that actually went in and worked on this diversity draft guidance. what strikes me first of all is that it was, primarily drafted and guided by an oncology group. So I would have loved to see more diversity group like us, like, having a voice. But again, this is our chance to really pitch in. So we're gonna do that, and we're going to be very proactive in terms of being vocal and push this forward. The second thing is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I read it 3 times already. I never saw, or I haven't come across MENA anywhere. Like Middle Eastern and North African, especially in light of the recent Directive 15. You would think that that would be highlighted somewhere, somehow, in the draft, but it's not. So we are going to be very vocal about that as well. Mm-hmm. So that's my first initial take, and I will just give you the floor to go on and share your thoughts.
Yeah. So Mitch, I mean, how many times did you read it, and what did you think?
I've only read it through and through twice. When it first came out, so June 26th, it was released, just to lay out more of the foundation for everybody. June 26th is when it was released, and the FDA gives 90 days to submit comments. So that means comments, questions, concerns, whatever you want to call them. They're due for submission September 26th. So that is like the deadline for submissions. The goal of these, we're going to try to have these conversations, I think, weekly. And to your point, you can't just read it once. You have to read it and almost like digest it in smaller parts. And that's what we want to do with kind of these live collaborative sessions too. So anybody that wants to jump in and talk about any section, we might try to target, be a little bit more intentional with the targets as we move forward in the coming weeks. But every week we're going to do an open forum conversation. We already have talked with some individuals, just whether they're, heavily focused on the site perspective, if they're, these really big, passionate super fans of regulatory, the legal aspect of these documents, and what all that looks like. So we're going to try to bring a plethora of people on to talk with us. But if anybody wants to jump on at any point in time, ping us, let us know ahead of time throughout the week. If you're interested in talking, we'll send you a link and invite you on. Or even if we're on live and you want to jump on and talk about something and leave it out of the comment section and just hop on with us, that would be fantastic too. But yeah, it's a lot. So I read it the first time. Documents like these are extremely dry too. They're extremely dry, and at the same time, you're going through them with like a fine-tooth comb from anybody in our industry, because you want to make sure you don't miss anything. So it's quite a bit. It's taxing mentally to read something like this. It's only 26 pages, but I felt like it could have been like several hundred is how it felt by the end of the day on the 26th. But I put together a little article, and, I posted that link to the article in the comments section here, but the article is only addressing 6 bullet points of one section. What's it? Section C of part 5, the content of the diversity action plan, measures to meet enrollment goals. So after reading it twice, I was really only able to take the time to comprehensively address the measures to meet enrollment goals. And I think that's a big one. There's some general guidance. It's like kind of these basic standpoints of this is going to be required. There might be some exceptions, but they're going to be far and few between, essentially. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, and what I saw from the community on the 26th, as everybody was kind of sharing it and spreading some of their own thoughts, was a lot of concern coming from sites. So that kind of inspired us to want to be able to jump on these and do these podcasts and conversations too, because we want everybody to kind of be able to share thoughts and opinions and perspectives, because, the more unique perspectives, the more stakeholders we have involved in formulating comments and feedback, the better. I think it's going to make I hope that my comments evolve, right? I don't have anything planned to submit right now. I'm not trying to submit comments this next week. I want to give it time, and I want to be able to digest, and I want to be able to talk with people, and better formulate, our thoughts and our responses so we can submit really, truly comprehensive quality comments and feedback to the FDA from what we've engaged with the community,
Mm-hmm.
But
I felt the same way. I'm on my third read. That's kind of how I digest things. As I skim first, I just try to get an overall idea of the document, and then I read it again to try to focus on the sections. And by the time I hit to the third one, I'm taking notes. I don't take notes until the third time, when I actually know what I'm taking notes on. And that's why the number one reason, as Mitch had said, the reason why this is so very important to have these live events, this open forum. Please, if you want to speak up about the diversity action plan, if you have a voice and you have comments, concerns, likes, whatever it might be, join these live events, because number one is, it says in here that, well, it doesn't reference anything about community sites at all. And I really should note that there are FDA websites where you can submit suggestions and comments and things like that. And if you go to those FDA websites right now and you go to try to add a comment, and it's got a drop down box like, who do you belong to? What are you? Community research sites are non existent in the FDA's list of stakeholders to listen to.
wow.
Mind blown. FDA, are you listening to me? The community research sites, the site networks, everything else like that, they are major growing stakeholders that do substantial enrollments in all of your trials. You audit them, but you don't have a drop-down box to listen to them. And I don't understand why. So maybe it's just because you don't know we are here. You don't know that we are growing, and you don't know that because you audit us. So the big question is, maybe FDA, submit an IT ticket, please, as soon as you watch this. Ask the IT department to add community research site into your systems so that the community research sites can have a voice in these notes. Because in 90 days, how are we supposed to do anything if you don't even recognize this as an entity?
Yeah, that's a great point. Phenomenal bringing that up. I had no idea. I didn't actually look into that yet.
Yeah. So
pretty
it's one thing to take comments, but it's another thing to not know who the comments are coming from. Therefore, you won't even listen to them.
Yeah. I mean, or just not maybe care enough to that point. But yeah, that's odd. Especially, it should be so intentional, considering who's involved. And honestly, even the guidance in here is when it talks about sustained community engagement, and cultural competency, proficiency training and stuff.
It talks about underrepresented populations, and this is in participants, but is it possible that some stakeholders are underrepresented?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's all about fostering those long-term relationships and everything. So 100% that just aligns. That's kind of funny. I love the irony.
Yeah. How inclusive are you when you don't talk to sites?
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was a little bit of a soapbox, guys, but I was very passionate when I read this, and I'm like, you're not even recognizing us as an entity. So that's
Very
kind of
good.
frustrating.
Very well said. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So live forums, again, this is the opportunity. If you are in this community and you want to talk about this, send a note in the comments, message one of us. Hey
Hi,
guys.
Ashley. That's Ashley Mitchell.
Ashley. See, so Ashley is a perfect example of a voice that is strong in our industry. She's really good at what she does. She's passionate. She's someone we can all look up to. She should have the opportunity to come onto a forum and talk about how she feels about the diversity action plan, or what she thinks it's going to do for her site or for her area. So, again, you have a voice in DiversiTrials. That's why we are here to serve. And it's really, really important that we speak up, because it's never going to change unless we do. Hi, Susan. How's it going?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the sites are, to steal a phrase that I've heard way too much lately, it's where the rubber meets the road. It's just kind of it's kind of interesting that they're excluded in that sense, because that's where that engagement's going to happen, right? I mean, I'm all for sponsors engaging in the communities and helping support that way, but more often than not, that translates to providing support or services for sites to be able to engage in the communities. It's not necessarily the sponsors doing that outreach directly when it comes to trial specifics.
Yeah, and that was a lot of the assumptions that I saw. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty details, over the next 90 days, we're going for maybe like once a week just to come together, do some follow-up, and do some deep dive into these sections. So I have a lot of comments I want to talk about, but I'd love to save those for like the deep dives. But like, what do you think should be the ground rules for like a community forum where we talk about this?
So just a quick suggestion. I mean, looking at the table of content here, there are around 10 sections. And I was just thinking, again, this is just a suggestion. If you can actually just handle one section at a time per week, I don't know. This is just a suggestion again. And then maybe the goal would be, yes, I mean, the procedures and how to submit and all, this is very helpful from the guidance. But what I'm thinking, maybe we can just break it down into a template form. You know, I mean,
make it digestible, and let's explain through it.
I mean, personally, I'd like to see a template to fill in, and I know it depends on the drugs or device or whatever the indication and the phase, but it would be more appropriate or probably more digestible and comprehensible, to have a template, just a simple template for people just to fill in.
Maybe the very first thing is, if you want to come on and talk with the forum about the diversity action plan guidance, maybe it would be important to read it first. Go and read it and then come on to the forum. That way we know what we're talking about, even if it's as a naive first read.
Yeah, I thank you for throwing that in there. I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer, but sometimes we do need to specify. Read it first before we talk about it. And Hadi, I like your suggestion as pretty much like putting together like a template, even if it's really just breaking down sections and leaving a comment box space. But that's something we could probably do. Let's work on that together. We'll throw together like a DiversiTrials DAP draft guidance comment feedback template. And and we'll throw it in. We'll throw it in on LinkedIn somewhere so people can snag it if they want, and kind of just use it as a good guide or reference sheet as they go through. And whether throughout the week as you're thinking about stuff or something comes up at like your site level or the sponsor CRO, et cetera, Susan's for it.
That might also be, so sometimes people don't want to speak up, but they have a voice that they want to be heard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if for any reason you want to speak up about this plan, but you want to remain anonymous, this is the safe zone. So we're happy to go over your comments, discuss your concerns. If you don't want to be identified, don't worry about it. We just want to make sure that this is a safe place so that we can exchange ideas and help to create one of the best guidances we can for a diversity action plan.
Yeah. And we did the burnout podcast recently. And I think, historically speaking, from personal experience as well, I think that anonymity comes heavily from the industry side, like the sponsor CRO side. Those are the people who are scared to talk. Sites have been finding their voice, especially for 2024.
Yeah, the voice of the sites. So that would be my objective is, every week we can talk about a section. We can talk about it ahead of time so we can get our questions together. We can really dissect it, figure out maybe what the intentions were, what we're trying to prevent, what we're trying to promote, and then talk about how that might impact in the real world. From a site's perspective, we can bring on other people. By the way, this doesn't have to just be for a site. This is an industry conversation. If you are allowed to be a sponsor, a CRO, or another stakeholder, and you're allowed to come onto a podcast to discuss, you're more than welcome. Please don't feel like you are alienated.
Yeah, no, I agree. And outside, I mean, it's almost, I don't want to say outside of our industry because they should be engaged and should be involved. There's other stakeholders like we talk about. but community leaders. I would love to have church group leaders and things like that, or other big community advocate organizations or groups that aren't solely focused on clinical research in a capacity, but they're there to support communities. I would love to have some of that feedback from their perspectives, right? Because that's like the last of the people who are normally hit. It's the communities themselves, how it actually affects the people. Like that, no one asks them. It's here's what we're going to do, and then you have to roll with it, right? Instead of just ask.
So, to give just a brief summary, we're going to deep dive into this, but for those of you who are just tuning in, you're like, what the heck is this diversity action plan? I've never heard of it. Well, so, and FDA says this right here in the beginning, but there is the FDORA Act of 2022, November 2022. FDORA was the congressional statutory. It was saying we must have a diversity action plan. FDA, you have X amount of time to get a diversity action plan in place. And so FDA has been working on this. And so what the grounds of this is saying is pretty much what we've heard, is that the diversity of the populations that we serve has a significant impact on the safety and tolerability of a drug and effectiveness of a drug to the body. Therefore, you have to account diversity into your safety profile of the drug if you want a new drug application to be approved. So the basis of this is on safety and tolerability of the drug on behalf of diversity, because it is a thing. You remember, if any of you watched the interview with LaShawn Sanders, her friend who had the blood pressure medication, who literally said right there on the label when they went to the pharmacy, may not work in African Americans. That is a big concern to the FDA. It's a problem. This is not a political move. This is not anything like that. This is something that's very important to safety for our patients in the future. And therefore, kudos to FDA for stepping up and framing this in a way that is truly in the mission of the FDA to protect the safety of our patients. And that was the very first thing that I'd like, oh, mic drop, oh snap, I'm so glad they're doing this. This is so good. Like, I think I put up a LinkedIn post and it's like, I wish I could hug every single one of you. I'm so glad that you are stepping up and saying this for our patients.
Yeah. So the draft guidance, there was initial draft guidance, and it's not remarkably different from what we saw in April 2022, which isn't a surprise. I mean, I saw the same stuff when I was working, with a specific focus on expanded access research. It's like, then you come out with, additional guidance or directive, and it's like, well, it didn't really change all that much. But exciting nonetheless. It still shows some degree of progress. But FDORA actually FDORA was supposed to require this to be done by the end of 2023. And we were talking about that yesterday in another meeting with another group. Fox, you weren't even on that one, so it's funny that you brought it up today as well. But yeah, it was required by the end of 2023. So we missed the mark a little bit, but that's okay. I mean, we're getting there.
It's A for effort, right? We're working on it.
6 months is nothing, right?
Yeah, on government time. That's great. That's fantastic.
But no, we're grateful. We have it right now, and it's a way for us to move forward and be very proactive.
How many sponsors have you talked to that are already trying to figure out the loopholes so they don't necessarily have to do it?
That's how it always has been, right? It's how can I get away with not doing something instead of how can we do something to be more inclusive? I think it's hard to tell. Everything seems to be from that finance perspective of, oh, this is going to cost more, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, look, you were talking about like creating healthcare equity and making the drugs better, right? Because they're better tested, they're better evaluated, they're better globally for everyone because we have the supporting data. To me, that just means that you have a better product, right? Like you are adding value to your drug by ensuring that it's tested amongst larger populations of people to show efficacy throughout a diverse group of representative data. You're not not hurting yourself by spending a little bit of extra money, making sure you pull a quality amount of people in to get good representation.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're far more effective in your drug, it's going to be far more utilized. That's the whole reason why we're here.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. I mean, outside the U.S. too, you know, when if we're going to talk like ex-U.S. as well, what we've found in conversations is that, you know, they end up doing their own tests. They do their own evaluations and exams. You know, they're underdosing these medications because it hasn't been tested in these populations yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely wild. That shouldn't be the case. You know, there are what we've seen a lot of, you know, recently and in some conversations that we've had is a push on this post-marketing commitment concept where it's, you know, to me, it's more of like a corrective action. Like, yep, well, we didn't do good enough to begin with, but we think this drug is great and we want to get it out there. And then once we market it, we have this commitment to run additional studies to be more, to get more inclusive data on our drug. And it's like, okay, well, how committed are you, for one? You know, it's kind of, is it just a false promise? Because there's not really necessarily this obligation to follow up on these PMCs. There's not like a legal obligation, like, oh, we have to follow up on it necessarily, right?
So maybe we need to talk about return on investment and show sponsors how they can get their money back. And probably push for community outreach plans and, you know, for them to sponsor those plans as well.
You
or
know,
maybe where they can actually cut costs that are wasted and apply them to places that could actually work. Yeah, go LaShawn.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's the whole point. Get everybody together. We can all collaborate, work together, formulate responses and comments, and hopefully we get enough voices that we can kind of mold each other's little Play-Doh brains, so we can come up with quality responses. You know, I want as many perspectives as I possibly can get, always, on like everything.
Yep.
I'm gonna ask my 10-year-old what she thinks.
Yep, that's my goal too. Is we're gonna have these sessions over the next, I don't know, maybe 80 days. And then we're going to take these sessions and literally create a community response to the FDA. It's not going to be a bunch of committee members of professionals and experts. It's going to be a community forum that responds to the FDA. The stronger, the more voices we have, the stronger.
Yep.
So that's the objective. That's what we want to do.
Great plan.
Absolutely.
So, I wonder. And I saw there's a big long list of all of the different offices that drafted this guidance, and it had all of these different sections of the FDA. And like you said, Hadi, there were some oncology offices in there, but I mean it pretty much listed every single office of the FDA as over here. It's on the page 2 of the guidance, that very bottom. You know, the big center for this, office for that, boom, 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 boom. All of these different groups: radiology, health and equity, women's health, biologics evaluation. So it looks like they tried to create a comprehensive list of people in the offices and the centers and all these different groups. But again, I don't see the representation on here for the people who might be doing the work that they're calling for.
That was my first, initial observation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're writing this, and maybe they're sitting here saying, you know, we can't listen to a million voices. We do have to consolidate it into something so we can put it into words. Otherwise, it'll just be a giant screaming match the whole time. But it might be, and maybe that's why they're opening this up for comments. Maybe exactly. This is our time.
Right. And we're grateful for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So on that note, I mean, this doesn't have to be an entire hour. We don't have to be for the introduction, but I did want to introduce the concept. DiversiTrials is going to be one of the frontline people for our community, our research, this industry, to come together, offer an opportunity for everyone to talk. Everyone has an opportunity to speak. And then we will be, I will gladly help to champion that voice and send it off to the FDA as needed.
Yeah, I think I want to leave anybody who picks this up later who's on now with kind of a question as well, because one of the things I've been tossing around my brain is how we're cross-referencing with our comments other guidance that exists, right? So this is draft guidance that's open for comments. However, when you look at like the enrollment goals that it talks about enrollment and ethnicity or race, it references, sponsors listing goals for categories according to the FDA guidance for reporting race, for reporting ethnicity. And then you cross-reference those reporting race guidance or reporting ethnicity guidance, and here's the minimums that you need to do. So it's like, well, I'm not a fan of setting the bar as low as possible and reporting on as low as possible, for one. But so I guess that's my question, is if anybody has thoughts or comments on how we go about addressing improvements to other aspects that are being referenced in the guidance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and Hadi, you could check me on this, but I'm pretty sure because they're pointing to safety and tolerability, and this might be getting into something a little bit, but it's very possible that they're going to have specified PK studies for certain races and ethnicities. And those PK studies are probably going to drive your in-value statistically for DSMBs and those groups. So you're going to have enrollment goals based off of the PK studies of potential phase 1 and phase 2 pivotals.
Most definitely.
I think that's going to be the direction you're going. So now the question is, and also in the guidance, the DAP is not required until phase 3.
Correct.
Which means that if we want safety and tolerability in the beginning, I wonder if you're going to have to start focusing on those PK values to build your DAP for phase 3 in the earlier phases. You're going to have a much more robust early phase development system so you can have those safeties and tolerabilities across different ethnicities, different minorities, different demographics. Yeah. I think so. As far as enrollment goes, Mitch, the enrollment number, I think, is going to be fully dependent on the safety and tolerability of the drug in the early phases.
I totally agree, and we're in discussions with some groups these groups are interested in actually, implementing or conducting some pre-phase studies outside the US, just get more of a data, safety data. Let's put it this way. So it's in the early discussion, so we can talk about that later on and have people be on the podcast with us as guests to introduce this idea as well. But yeah, I mean, this will not be into effect, until probably the end of 2025, given we have 3 months now, and then it has to be 180 days to take effect. So we have some time to really, really, really push this forward.
Have you guys heard the rumor of the phase 5 study?
No, enlighten me.
So they are someone. I don't. This just called a Daniel rumor for now because I don't know where to reference this. I don't even know where I heard it. I talked to a lot of people, but there was a talk about a phase 5 study. It was like a post-market analysis study with a specificity on demographics. So you could perform like a phase 5 study on this drug in this population for the safety and tolerability that we do not yet have on some of the drugs that are on the market.
Like subgroup analysis, specific.
Yeah, exactly. So they're. I don't remember who talked about it. Maybe it's just something I made up.
I've heard about something like that where there's subgroup analysis will come in from different parts of the world, and they will do a meta-analysis based on the subgroup analysis.
Yep.
So it was a little confusing. It's not really set in stone yet, but it's in discussions.
I heard phase 5 studies somewhere. I don't know where. And if it comes to me when I'm sleeping or something, I'll write it down. But the idea is a phase 5 study is a post-market study with a focus on demographics and
just
diversity.
Call me immediately.
I will. I'll be like, I learned it from
3 a.m.
3 a.m. Yeah. But I mean, and that's actually a really good point, is when this DAP comes through, there's going to be the potential for a lot of back work on the drugs that are already on the market.
Yeah.
And our drugs going to be grandfathered in because we know there are drugs that don't work. So are they going to have to be doing, maybe that's the other thing that the sponsors might be looking at is trying to get these DAP programs in place so that they can reach more demographics, more populations with the same drug, something, with more of a targeted analysis rather than a blanket prescription program.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see anything about them being, required like retroactively, because you can't then develop a plan for something that's already been done.
Mm-hmm. But then how do you create that standard if you have one set of drugs that they're under a new standard? And then the old set of drugs, are they grandfathered in? Anyway, so just interesting question, all kinds of things. So these are questions to ask in these forums. So I would recommend that. Please feel free to join, bring your questions, comments. We'll have a little bit more of a structure when it comes to breaking this down. Might give you a little bit of a heads up, but we've got to do this. We've got to do this together.
Yep. We'll try to get them scheduled and throw what the target section is. I would like to do that, throw the target section of the DAP guidance, and then we can go from there. So that way people can come, a little bit more intentional.
Come prepared.
And we could field anything, at any point in time, but we'd like to be as intentional as possible with these, because the more intentional we are, the more likely we're going to be productive with each session that we have. And there's not too many, right? We've got 80 days, it's essentially just under 3 months at this point. So we've got another 11 weeks or 11 weeks total, essentially, to kind of run these live sessions. So we could realistically run through every section of these that needs to be ran through twice over, and then kind of, do culminations or progress updates and statuses as we go through.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right. So if you are not yet subscribed to DiversiTrials or following DiversiTrials on LinkedIn, please tune in, check your notifications, look out for these live events. We're going to be right here helping to represent our community research community, our industry in general, for diversity and inclusion in clinical research. So please consider subscribing and joining the team.
And we're gonna wrap it up, and we'll play our DAP and Me song again as we close for anybody who missed it.
Love it. Thank you, guys.
It was good. It's worth sticking around, everyone.
Yep.
Take a listen.
Thank you.
Talk to you next week.
Welcome to DiversiTrials and Tribulations, where we break down the latest FDA revelations. DAPs, that's the talk of the day. Diversity action plans paving the way. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all, it's within our reach. FDA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around. FDA, please, we need the shift. Diversity and trials, let's uplift. DAP, yeah, you know me. Inclusivity for all, it's the key. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all, it's within our reach. FDA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around. So tune in live and join the ride. DiversiTrials and Tribulations, let's spread it wide. With DAPs, we're forging the path. Together in research, let's make it last. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all, it's within our reach. FDA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around. So tune in live and join the ride. DiversiTrials and tribulations, let's spread it wide. With DAPs, we're forging the path. Together in research, let's make it last. Diversity and trials, that's what we preach. Inclusivity for all that's within our reach. FBA's draft, we're breaking it down. All diversity trials, the best part around.